USIEA has been very much engaged in the Abraham Accord process, and we've been reviewing and editing and working on the language for the bylaws and mission of the newly established Abraham Accord Congressional Caucus on Capitol Hill. What this is going to do is create a staging ground for Congress to build that road to the Middle East, policy, being able to create and open the doors for industry, incentivizing business into the Middle East, into these Abraham Accord nations. The Bible indicates that during the period of Israel's restoration, that nations will come and develop significant relationships with Israel. We see this in Isaiah 49 through and through, Isaiah 60, that the kings will become the foster fathers of Israel. The queens will become the nursing mothers, that nations will come to her brightness and to the rising of her dawn, that the wealth of the seas will come to her, the nations will bring their wealth. This is why the Abraham Accords are so significant. The dropping of this Arab embargo for the first time in history against Israel. Treaties formed between the United States and Israel and Bahrain and UAE and Morocco and so on, with a list of other nations that are ready to join. It's significant because this was forecasted. We understand that the prophets anticipated this. And it shows also a restructuring on the earth today, a realignment of things. And if you will, a fulfillment of God's covenant to Abraham, where end of world blessings for the Gentiles was the aim, that the God of Israel will somehow be known in all nations. We had the privilege of being on Capitol Hill just a couple of weeks ago, and were successful at two major things. We were able to cast the vision for what it would be to reduce our dependency on China and nearshore some of our life sciences and pharmaceutical industry and manufacturing to the Abraham Accord nations in the Middle East. If you can imagine that at the height of the pandemic, China cut our supply lines on things like Tylenol and Advil and our antibiotics that are produced, 80% of it produced in China and her tributaries. It created an existential threat to the United States of America. So it has been a major, major focal point of lawmakers to try to figure out how do we get ourselves weaned off of China? How do we get Israel weaned off of China? And so really the new way forward is to think in terms of we're going to onshore our pharmaceutical companies back to the United States, or we're going to nearshore to our ally nations. We presented the idea of being able to do that manufacturing in the UAE and Morocco. In addition, we were able to help our lawmakers understand that the life sciences and pharmaceutical collaboration between the United States and Israel is in shambles. That if we're to have a staging ground in the Middle East for the Abraham Accord nations, for our supply lines to be partly there, this collaboration between the United States and Israel has to come to a new level. We cast the vision for how to remove the obstacles that stand in between us and to have Congress create that pathway forward. You might imagine that the congressmen that we met with were very excited about these possibilities. USIEA is headed into a brand new season. Our organization is going to an entirely different level, and I'm looking forward to making a great announcement in the weeks to come about 2022.